"I can make him walk," the little girl declared to the millionaire, promising a miracle in exchange for a meal. Then she does something that not even 100 doctors could do. Comment giving a rating from 0 to 10 for my story. Your opinion is very important. And subscribe to my channel to support my work. I count on your help. The late afternoon sun glared off the tinted windows of the luxury SUV parked on Fifth Avenue, the bustling commercial artery of Manhattan. Inside, widower Jasper Thorne carefully adjusted his son's special car seat before lifting him out. The tautness in his muscles betrayed the daily routine, a silent ritual of grief, carrying his 4-year-old son, Finley, who had never taken a single step. Jasper, barely 30, and with the striking looks of a movie star, had built a financial empire investing in Wall Street stocks, amassing a fortune that seemed limitless. His net worth in dollars grew exponentially through hedge funds and even Bitcoin, but all that wealth felt meaningless compared to the one thing money couldn't buy: the ability to see his son walk. As he crossed the sidewalk toward the office of the city's most renowned orthopedic surgeon, his thoughts spiraled into the same old despair. 3 years of consultations with the best specialists, outrageously expensive experimental treatments, imported equipment, alternative therapies, all for naught. Finley remained with his legs limp, completely dependent on his father for every move. Then, a soft, almost whispered voice, like an unexpected melody, cut through his thoughts. "I can make him walk." Jasper stopped short, searching for the source of the words. Beside a trash can, overflowing with refuse, nearly exposed under a torn and filthy dress, stood a girl who looked no older than 4, though her eyes held a disturbing maturity. Her matted hair framed a thin face, but her eyes burned with a determination that belied her skeletal frame. "What did you say?" he asked, crouching down to the child's height, unable to mask the irritation in his voice. How dare a beggar make such a claim after everything he had tried? The girl pointed delicately at the boy in his father's arms, repeating with the same unwavering confidence, "I can make him walk. I know how to heal his legs." Jasper felt a mixture of anger and desperation rising in his chest. How many times had he heard empty promises from faith healers, charlatans, and con artists eager to exploit his pain? How many false prophets had offered miracles in exchange for money? "Don't mess with me, kid." "This isn't child's play," he snapped, adjusting his son more comfortably in his arms, preparing to continue walking. But something in the little girl's piercing gaze gave him pause. There was a seriousness there, a conviction that didn't match her apparent age. She wasn't asking for money, wasn't putting on a dramatic performance like the others. She was simply stating with disarming simplicity that she could help. "My grandmother taught me. She healed many children before she passed on," the girl continued, extending one of her small, dirty hands toward Finley's motionless leg. "I can show you." Jasper recoiled instinctively, protecting his son. "Don't you dare touch him. You're just a dirty beggar. How dare you?" His voice trailed off as he saw tears streaming down the child's face. Not tears of hurt or self-pity, but of deep frustration, as if she truly knew she could help, but couldn't get the adult to believe. "I know you don't trust me," she said, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "But he can walk. He just needs time and the right techniques." Throughout this exchange, passers-by hurried along the sidewalk, some casting disapproving glances at the well-dressed man talking to a beggar. Jasper felt the weight of silent judgment, the social pressure that always accompanied him because he was carrying a different child. "How can a 4-year-old know about medicine?" he asked, trying to maintain his skepticism, but unable to completely ignore the unsettling presence. "I'm 4, she corrected softly. "And it's not medicine. It's old techniques, special massages, exercises that my Romani grandmother taught me before she said goodbye forever." "She said I had the gift in my hands." Jasper stared at the girl's thin little hands, trying to imagine how something so fragile could accomplish what the best doctors in the country couldn't. It was absurd, irrational, completely illogical. But as he pondered the impossibility of the situation, his son slightly twitched one of his legs, as if he had sensed something special in the presence of the strange girl. It was an almost imperceptible movement, but the father, accustomed to observing every signal from the boy's body, noticed immediately. "He moved his leg," he murmured, more to himself than to the girl. "He feels that I can help," she replied matter-of-factly. "Children always know when someone can heal them. It's pure instinct." Jasper remained silent for long seconds as his world of scientific certainties began to crumble before this walking impossibility. How could he consider trusting a 4-year-old beggar when he had consulted the world's leading specialists? How could he risk his son's health based on the word of a child abandoned on the streets? But then he remembered the latest exams, the discouraging expressions of the doctors, the whispered conversations about accepting reality and focusing on quality of life. He remembered all the sleepless nights, watching his son sleep and wondering if he would ever see those little legs move with a life of their own. "Where do you live?" he finally asked, surprising himself with the question. "Nowhere," she replied without self-pity. "I sleep where I can, eat where I can." The millionaire's heart clenched. Here was a child the same age as his son, alone in the world, offering help when she herself desperately needed care. There was something deeply disturbing and yet touching about the situation. If I considered giving you a chance," he said slowly, still not believing his own words, "how would it work? What exactly would you do?" The girl's eyes lit up for the first time since they started talking. "I need to work with him 3 times a week in a quiet place. The massages are special, the exercises are gentle. I can't do it on the street or in a hurry." Jasper felt a shiver run down his spine. Was he really considering this madness? Was he thinking of entrusting the health of his most precious son to a beggar who didn't even have a place to sleep? But when he looked again at the boy's motionless legs, when he remembered all the broken medical promises, when he saw the glimmer of hope in the little stranger's eyes, a decision began to form in his mind. A decision that would change everything. 2 weeks had passed since the encounter on the sidewalk, and Jasper couldn't get the little beggar girl out of his thoughts. During that time, he had done something he never imagined. He began to observe her discreetly. Every day, on the way to the office, he deliberately detoured through the same commercial street, looking for that small, determined figure. What he discovered disturbed him deeply. The child was not just an ordinary beggar. She had a specific routine, always appearing in the same locations at the same times. Even more impressive was how she interacted with other people in vulnerable situations. Jasper watched her helping an elderly man with back pain, making gentle movements that seemed to relieve the man's discomfort. He saw her consoling another street child who was crying, using delicate gestures that demonstrated an inexplicable knowledge about specific points of the human body. Meanwhile, at home, the tension with his wife, the boy's cruel stepmother, increased every day. The woman, with her cold, calculating beauty, had noticed her husband's restlessness and constantly bombarded him with criticisms about his desperate methods of seeking a cure for her stepson. "You're becoming pathetic," she said one morning, as she applied expensive makeup in front of the mirror of their luxurious bedroom. "Accept that the boy will never be normal. Keep spending our wealth on these useless treatments, and you'll end up compromising our entire fortune." Jasper clenched his fists, trying to control the anger that was rising in his chest. The woman always referred to the boy as the boy or your son, never showing any genuine affection for the child. He knew that she had married him for his thriving investments and the substantial inheritance he controlled, but it still hurt to hear that coldness. "He's my son, and I'm going to do everything in my power to help him," he replied, watching the movement of the street through the window. "Your son," she repeated ironically. "How convenient. When you need to justify exorbitant expenses, he's your son. When you need someone to take care of him while you're working building your empire of stocks and profits, he becomes our responsibility." The words hit hard, especially because there was a painful truth in them. Since he had been widowed from his first wife, Finley's mother, Jasper had obsessively immersed himself in work, building an impressive fortune through investments and dividends, but neglecting emotional aspects of fatherhood. It was in this tense atmosphere that he made a decision that would change everything. That afternoon, after another frustrating consultation with a neurologist who only repeated known diagnoses, Jasper looked again for the beggar girl. He found her in the same place as always, sitting beside a tree, watching people move with that disturbing maturity in her eyes. "Do you still believe you can help my son?" he asked, approaching her directly. She looked up, and for the first time he noticed that, despite the dirt and malnutrition, there was a natural beauty in that childish face, a beauty that spoke of ancestry, of ancient knowledge, of secrets passed down through generations. "I always believed," she replied simply. "The question is whether you're finally ready to trust." Jasper took a deep breath, summoning the courage for the riskiest decision of his life. "If I rent an appropriate, discreet location where you could work with him, would you really try?" The girl's eyes lit up, but her expression remained serious. "I wouldn't try, I would, but you need to promise me one thing." "What?" "You can't give up halfway. The process is long, sometimes painful. There will be days when it will seem like nothing is working. You need to trust completely or it won't work." There was something almost hypnotic in the child's voice, an authority that contrasted completely with her fragile appearance. Jasper wondered what kind of life she had lived to develop such determination. "How long would it take?" he asked. 6 months, 3 times a week, 2-hour sessions each. Jasper calculated mentally. It would be more than 70 sessions, an investment of time and trust that surpassed anything he had ever tried. But looking into those determined eyes, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: genuine hope. "And in return, what do you want?" The question seemed to surprise the girl. She was silent for a few seconds, as if she had never considered that possibility. "A place to sleep when the sessions are over," she said finally. "And food during those 6 months." The simplicity of the request deeply touched the man's heart. Here was a child offering what she believed was a miracle in exchange only for basic survival needs. "We have a deal," he said, extending his hand. When the girl's small, dirty fingers touched his manicured hand, Jasper felt a strange energy, as if something ancestral and powerful was being sealed at that moment. In the following days, he worked discreetly to organize everything. He rented a small and comfortable apartment in a quiet residential neighborhood, furnishing it with the essentials and equipping it with soft rugs and cushions suitable for the exercises the girl had described. The biggest challenge was inventing convincing excuses to justify the regular absences with his son. He lied to his wife about new experimental treatments, specialized consultations, and alternative therapies in distant clinics. Each lie weighed on his conscience, but the hope of seeing his son walk outweighed any guilt. The first session was scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon. When he arrived at the apartment carrying the boy, Jasper found the little therapist completely transformed. She had washed herself, combed her hair, and was wearing simple but clean clothes that he had provided. "Are you ready?" she asked, extending her arms to receive the boy. Jasper hesitated for a moment. Once he handed his son over to this mysterious child, there would be no turning back. It would be the beginning of a journey that could lead them to the expected miracle or to the most painful of disappointments. "I'm ready," he replied, carefully placing the boy in the girl's delicate arms. And so began the most extraordinary and secret experience of the millionaire's life, a journey that would test not only his faith in the impossible, but also put at risk everything he had built, including his marriage, his reputation, and his family stability. What he didn't know was that at that very moment, his wife was hiring a private investigator to discover the real reason behind his mysterious absences, starting a chain of events that would make that secret impossible to keep for long. 3 months had passed since the beginning of the secret meetings, and the results were beginning to surprise even Jasper's skepticism. In the discreet apartment that had become a sanctuary of hope, the little therapist worked with a dedication that bordered on the supernatural. During these weeks, the millionaire watched fascinated as the girl applied techniques that seemed to have been developed over centuries. Her small hands found specific points on the boy's legs, applying delicate pressures that triggered reflexes that hadn't existed before. She hummed old melodies as she worked, creating an almost magical atmosphere in the environment. "Can you feel that?" she would ask the boy, gently pressing the inside of his thigh. To the father's amazement, the boy responded with small, involuntary movements, as if something dormant was gradually awakening. The progress was slow but undeniable. First, there were just imperceptible muscle twitches. Then, more coordinated reflexes when the girl stimulated certain areas. In the 10th session, something happened that made the businessman's heart race. The boy managed to slightly bend one of his knees when prompted. "It's working," the father whispered, tears streaming down his face as he watched the little miracle. The girl smiled for the first time since they met. "I told you he would walk. We just need to be patient." During those months of gradual progress, the child revealed fragments of her personal story. She spoke about her Romani grandmother, who had raised her after the premature loss of her parents in a terrible accident. The old woman had spent decades perfecting ancestral healing techniques, combining traditional knowledge with a special sensitivity to identify energy blockages in the human body. "She said I had blessed hands," the girl explained one afternoon, while gently massaging the boy's feet, "that I could feel where the energy was trapped and how to release it." The businessman, who had always relied solely on science and the logic of financial investments, found himself in completely new territory. His fortune, built through rational market analysis and calculated investments in hedge funds, seemed insignificant in the face of that primitive wisdom that could not be bought or quantified. However, as the results became more evident, the pressure at home also grew. The cruel stepmother had noticed subtle changes in the boy's and her husband's behavior. The boy seemed more animated, more responsive, and the businessman displayed a renewed hope that she couldn't understand. "You're different," she said one night, watching him carefully during dinner. "And so is he. What exactly is going on in these mysterious consultations of yours?" The millionaire swallowed hard, trying to maintain his composure. "They're experimental treatments. Nothing you need to worry about. Treatments that cost a fortune and about which you refuse to speak," she insisted, her cold eyes analyzing every expression on her husband's face. "Treatments that always happen at the same times, twice a week, and that leave you both exhausted but strangely happy." The woman was not only cruel, but also extremely intelligent. She had built a successful career before the marriage precisely because of her ability to read people and situations. And now, all her instincts screamed that something important was being hidden from her. It was then that she made the decision that would change everything. She discreetly hired a private investigator to follow her husband's steps. The detective chosen was a meticulous and discreet man, specialized in cases of marital infidelity. For an entire week, he followed the businessman and his son, documenting every move, every stop, every encounter. What he discovered was disturbing in a completely unexpected way. "Your husband is meeting regularly with a child," the investigator reported during a private meeting in an elegant downtown coffee shop. "A girl, apparently 4 years old, in an apartment that he keeps secret." The stepmother's face paled. Her worst suspicions about marital betrayal were instantly replaced by something much more sinister and incomprehensible. "A child?" she repeated, trying to process the information. What kind of child? From what I could observe, a minor living on the streets. He takes her to this apartment along with his son and stays there for hours. I have photos, videos, complete documentation of all the encounters. The woman's mind raced in dark directions. What kind of situation could explain that behavior? Why would her husband hide meetings with a child abandoned on the streets? And why would he take his own son to these mysterious meetings? I want to see everything, she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of horror and morbid curiosity. Meanwhile, in the secret apartment, completely unaware of the investigation unfolding, the businessman witnessed a moment he would never forget. During the 24th session, something extraordinary happened. The girl was working with total concentration on the boy's legs, applying a complex sequence of massages that she had learned from her grandmother. Her small hands moved with surgical precision, finding points that she seemed to know intuitively. "Now try," she said softly, positioning the boy so that his feet touched the ground. What happened next made time stand still. The boy, supporting himself on the small therapist's hands, managed to partially sustain his own weight on his legs. For just a few seconds, but undeniably, he was almost standing. "My God!" exclaimed the father, covering his face with his hands as he sobbed with emotion. "He's doing it! He's really doing it!" The girl remained calm, but her eyes shone with satisfaction. "There are 3 months left. When we finish, he will walk alone." In that moment of triumph and renewed hope, neither of them imagined that a few blocks away a woman was analyzing photographs that she interpreted completely wrongly, preparing for a confrontation that would put at risk not only the secret they were protecting, but the entire future of that healing journey. The cruel stepmother spent the entire night studying the evidence collected by the investigator, constructing in her mind a scenario that, although completely incorrect, made sense within her perspective, distorted by distrust and resentment. The next morning, she made a decision that would change the course of everything. She would confront her husband directly, armed with the evidence of her discovery, without imagining that she was about to interrupt the miracle that was finally manifesting in that fragmented family's life. The fate of everyone involved now depended on how that confrontation would unfold, and whether the truth would be able to overcome the distorted interpretations of a mind consumed by control and suspicion. The confrontation happened on a Saturday morning, when the businessman was preparing for another session with the little therapist. The cruel stepmother waited until he was putting his son in the car to appear in the garage, holding an envelope with the investigator's photographs. "We need to talk," she said, her voice laden with a contained fury that made the air seem heavier. "Now!" The millionaire felt the blood freeze in his veins as he saw the expression on his wife's face. During all those months, he had feared that this moment would come, but now that it was before him, he discovered that he had no preparation whatsoever to face the situation. "I don't know what you're talking about," he tried, feigning normalcy as he adjusted his son's seatbelt. "Don't treat me like an idiot," she retorted, opening the envelope and spreading the photographs over the car's hood. "I know exactly where you've been going, who you've been meeting, and what you've been doing." The images clearly showed the businessman entering and leaving the discreet building, always carrying the boy, sometimes accompanied by the small figure of the beggar girl. For those who didn't know the true context, the photographs really seemed to suggest something deeply disturbing. "Can you explain to me, what kind of relationship is this with a street child?" asked the stepmother, her voice rising in tone. "What kind of man takes his own son to secret meetings with an abandoned minor?" The businessman looked at the photographs, immediately realizing how the situation could be misinterpreted. His mind raced, trying to find an explanation that sounded convincing, without revealing the truth about the treatments. "It's not what it looks like," he said, his voice failing slightly. "I can explain everything." "Then explain!" she shouted, and for the first time since they got married, the millionaire saw real tears in his wife's eyes. "Explain Why my husband is secretly meeting with a child. Explain why you lied to me for months. It was in that moment of extreme tension that something unexpected happened. The boy, who until then had been watching the discussion in silence, did something that paralyzed both adults. He moved in his car seat, stretching one of his legs in a deliberate and coordinated way. The stepmother noticed the movement and fell silent, frowning. It was a type of movement that she had never seen the boy do before. "What was that?" she asked, pointing to the boy's leg. He moved his leg?" The businessman saw an opportunity to reveal at least part of the truth. "That's why I've been meeting her," he said slowly. "The girl, she's helping our son." "Helping how?" The stepmother's voice had lost some of its aggressiveness, replaced by genuine confusion. "She knows ancient healing techniques, massages, special exercises. During these months she's been working with him and—" He paused, observing his wife's face. "He's improving." The woman looked again at the boy, who was now moving both legs inside the car seat, something she knew was impossible according to all the medical diagnoses they had received. "That's impossible," she whispered. "The doctors said he would never—" "I know what the doctors said," the businessman interrupted, "but I'm seeing it with my own eyes. She's managed to do something that no specialist has been able to do." During the following minutes, he told the whole story. The encounter on the sidewalk, the desperate decision to give the girl a chance, the months of secret sessions, the gradual but undeniable progress. As he spoke, he saw his wife's expression changing from anger to disbelief, and then to something that seemed to be a complex mixture of hope and regret. "Why didn't you tell me?" she finally asked, her voice lower. "Why did you keep this a secret?" "Because you would have stopped me," he replied with brutal honesty. "You would have thought it was madness. You would have said it was a waste of time and money. And maybe you were right, but I had to try." The stepmother remained silent for long minutes, processing everything she had heard. Then suddenly she asked a question that surprised her husband. "Can I meet her?" "How?" "The girl. Can I meet her? I want to see with my own eyes what she does." It was thus that, a few hours later, in a situation that none of those involved had imagined possible, the cruel stepmother found herself in the secret apartment, watching the little therapist work with her stepson. What she saw left her deeply shaken. The girl was not just an abandoned child trying to help out of desperate altruism. She was a genuine little healer, possessing knowledge that transcended any rational explanation. Her hands moved with absolute precision, finding exact points that triggered surprising muscular responses. But it was when the girl paused in her work and looked directly at the stepmother that something unexpected happened. "You also had someone special who couldn't walk," the little girl said with her sweet but piercing voice. "That's why you're so afraid." The woman paled. It was impossible for that child to know about her younger brother, about the disability he had developed in childhood, about how the family had been ashamed and gradually excluded him from social interaction. It was impossible for her to know about the guilt she carried for having been part of that cruel abandonment. "How did you—" she began, but her voice failed. "People always reveal their pains when they are near me," the girl explained simply. "It's part of the gift. I can feel not only where the body is hurt, but also where the heart is wounded." At that moment, years of resentment and calculating coldness began to crumble in the stepmother's chest. She remembered the brother she had helped abandon, the nights when she cried hidden, thinking of him, of how she had become hard and controlling so as never to feel vulnerable again in the face of pain. "He died alone," she whispered, tears finally welling up uncontrollably. "My little brother died alone because our family was ashamed of him." The little therapist approached the adult woman and, with a kindness that contrasted with her young age, held her hand. "You can honor his memory by helping this boy walk," she said. "You can choose to be different now." It was in this moment of deep emotion and revelation that the greatest miracle of all happened. The boy, inspired by the transformative energy that filled the environment, did something that left everyone breathless. He supported himself on his own hands, slowly rose, and took 3 hesitant but unequivocal steps towards his stepmother. The silence that followed was broken only by the sobs of joy of the adults present. The businessman held the son who was finally walking. The stepmother wept with emotion and regret, and the little therapist smiled with the satisfaction of another cure completed. "Now he just needs practice," she said softly. "The hardest part is already over." In the following months, the family restructured completely. The stepmother, transformed by the impact of that experience, became a true mother to the boy, dedicating herself to helping him perfect his ability to walk. The businessman, emotionally renewed, decided to use part of his vast fortune to create an institute dedicated to preserving and teaching ancient healing techniques, with the little therapist as its first beneficiary and future instructor. And the girl, who had come to them as a nameless, homeless beggar, officially became part of the family that had healed not only physically, but also emotionally. Her ancestral wisdom finally found the recognition and care it deserved, while her presence forever transformed the lives of all who were fortunate enough to know her. The miracle wasn't just in the fact that a child had walked again, but in the discovery that true love and faith in the impossible can heal wounds far deeper than any physical disability. And that sometimes life's greatest teachers appear in the most unexpected moments and forms, carrying in their small hands the power to completely transform the destiny of an entire family. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.